He always placed a glass on the door handle and a pot lid on the door frame every time he stayed in a hotel, so he could detect anyone breaking in, no matter how expensive a phone is. After using it just once, I smash it to pieces and throw it into a drain to prevent being tracked. He always kept an alarm clock on his body while sleeping, setting it to wake him every half an hour, just in case someone tried to assassinate or capture him in his sleep. As the top performer at the Solomok platform, one mistake could mean eternal damnation. For example, this time he took on a job to assassinate a wealthy man. It seemed simple at first: lie in wait in the building across from the targets and take him out with one shot when he appeared, but unexpectedly, a curvy woman walked in, flirting with the wealthy man. They kept moving around in his scope, making it impossible for him to get a clear shot. Finally, the target sat still. Now was the perfect time to shoot. His heart rate remained at 65, but the hitman knew it wasn't his optimal state. However, he couldn't wait any longer, and decisively pulled the trigger. Damn, missed. He tried to shoot again, but the target quickly closed the curtains. Worse yet, his location was exposed, and the police were likely on their way. He had to evacuate immediately, leaving no fingerprints or evidence. He gathered the bullet casing, took off his work suit, packed his weapon, wore a helmet, slipped out of the building, threw the tablecloth into the trash, started his motorbike, and dropped the casing into the sewer. He discarded his work clothes into a truck, threw his gloves into the helmet and tossed it into the moat. Every step in his escape was seamless, and not only did he eliminate all evidence, he also managed to evade the entire city's police force. He wished he could even clean out his intestines 8 times to remove any scent, and threw his last weapon into a trash bin at the airport. As he was about to leave the city, he saw a police dog while waiting to board. Holding his breath, he made eye contact with the dog. The dog didn't do anything, but he still felt he wasn't clean enough. He immediately turned back to the restroom, washed again, and threw his expensive watch into the trash. He was cautious on the plane, noticing a police officer on board. The more he avoided him, the more they crossed paths, ending up meeting 3 times. The hitman grew suspicious that it wasn't just a coincidence and changed his route. He stayed in a local hotel overnight, even though he could have been home earlier. This delay, unbeknownst to him, would soon become the regret of his life. Near his home, he found 2 big footprints and many cigarette butts. Someone had clearly been there. His wife was home alone, and anxiety coursed through him. He rushed back to his car to grab his weapon, but instead of entering through the front door, he ran into the woods nearby. He noticed similar footprints in the woods while paying attention to any movements in his house. His unease grew, and he cautiously snuck in through the back door. He found the music playing, but no sign of anyone. There was just a knife rack scattered on the floor, along with blood stains. Panicked, he rushed into the bathroom, which was in complete disarray. The window was shattered, and blood was everywhere. His wife was nowhere to be found. Fortunately, his wife survived after emergency care, though barely alive. According to his brother-in-law, the assailants were a man and a woman, clearly targeting him. His wife didn't reveal even a word about him, and even fought desperately against the attackers. She stabbed the male assailant in the thigh, scaring the pair enough to flee, fully enraged upon learning everything. From now on, those 2 assailants' lives are on a countdown. He rushed home, opened the cellar, took out all his weapons and fake passports, and remembered his brother-in-law mentioning that the attackers left in a green taxi. He followed this lead and investigated for days, only to discover that most taxis in the city were orange or blue, with very few being green. This greatly narrowed down his search. At night, he put on a mask and broke into the taxi headquarters. He found the records of a green taxi by tracking vehicle routes, and a driver named Jack emerged as a lead. Before leaving, he made the scene look like a break-in. The next day, he waited outside the taxi company and sure enough, Jack showed up. Seeing Jack waiting for a fare, he disguised himself as a passenger and got into the car. Jack looked terrified as he quietly pulled out a gun. Jack thought it was a robbery, so he handed over all his belongings. But the hitman wasn't done. He reminded Jack about the job he took 3 days earlier, and Jack quickly remembered. That day, I picked up a couple from a private plane. The guy was weird, and the woman looked like a cotton swab. They used Google Maps to navigate to a private residence and told me to drop them off there, Jack explained. I waited an hour before they came back out, and the man's leg was badly injured. All the details matched. The hitman ordered Jack to drive into an abandoned warehouse. Just as he was about to calm himself with a cigarette, the hitman shot him. Jack's loose lips were like a pair of loose pants. The only way to be sure was to kill him. From Jack's description, the attackers used a private plane and were unfamiliar with the area, which meant his boss must be involved. Without delay, he caught a plane to New Orleans, where his boss had several warehouses filled with all sorts of weapons and fake license plates. He chose one out of the 6 warehouses and went to stake out Salamanca's headquarters. Getting close to his boss was no easy task. Without clearance, it was impossible to get inside. Just then, his boss's female assistant appeared, giving him an idea. No one can resist receiving a package in this day and age, especially a beauty-conscious middle-aged woman, he thought, drawing a fake work badge for himself, disguised as a sanitation worker. He smiled politely as the delivery man approached, dragging a large garbage bin as he followed behind. Who would have guessed that a sanitation worker putting on gloves for work was actually preparing for a kill? As the delivery man went inside to drop off the package, the hitman pretended to search for garbage outside while silently counting the seconds. He noted exactly when the assistant's door closed. When the delivery man finished and exited, the hitman lowered his head as if drinking water, waiting until the delivery man fully stepped into the elevator. He then quickly rose, kicking the elevator door, retrieving a weapon from the garbage bin. He walked into the assistant's office, scaring her enough that she led him straight to the boss's office. The boss was utterly terrified. Having a hitman come to the headquarters was taboo. He wanted the names of the two attackers. Even after putting 3 holes in the boss's notebook, the boss wouldn't say a word. The hitman admired his professionalism, so he rewarded him with 3 more nails from his 9mm gun. He even thoughtfully called 911 for him, calculating that a non-smoker in good health could survive for 6 to 7 minutes. Enough time if the boss decided to talk. But the boss smoked at least 2 packs a day and lasted only 3 seconds before he died. The female assistant became the only lead left. The desperate assistant knew she had no chance of survival. She promised to hand over the boss's backup orders, with one condition, to make her death look like an accident so her children could claim the insurance. It wasn't a difficult request for the hitman, but the problem was that the backup orders were hidden at the assistant's house. They would encounter many people on their way, and there was no guarantee she wouldn't try to seek help. Suddenly, in the elevator, a passerby made a joke. Need help? The assistant wasn't foolish. She knew that if she had even the slightest wrong idea, the hitman would easily kill her and walk away. She obediently led the hitman back to her house and handed over the boss's backup orders, fulfilling her promise. Finally, the hitman obtained the names and addresses of the 2 attackers, the man called Big Guy and the woman known as Cotton Swab. He also kept his promise, giving her the least painful death by snapping her neck and making it look like a fall down the stairs, ensuring her children could claim the insurance. Later, changing his identity again, the hitman traveled to Florida, where Big Guy lived. He soon spotted his target among the crowd, a person with a pronounced limp. After days of following her, he noticed she was always surrounded by friends, and even worse, she had a guard dog, which only increased the difficulty of taking revenge. The hitman considered his options, then decided to withdraw. But it wasn't because he was afraid, he planned to outsmart them instead. The hitman bought a pack of beef, a bottle of malt liquor, and a large amount of sleeping pills, then staked out her house, waiting for an opportunity. Seeing her arrive home alone, he made his move. He immediately threw the drug-laced beef to the guard dog, and when its barking ceased, he quietly entered the yard. Seeing the dog fast asleep, he proceeded toward the house. The sound of running water could be heard from the bathroom, as if someone was taking a shower. However, he didn't act immediately, suspecting it might be a trick, and instead, headed to the bedroom. But suddenly, out of nowhere, a shadow attacked him. A fierce fight ensued. At first, Big Guy had the upper hand thanks to her physical strength. It was clear that in sheer power, the hitman was outmatched. But his agility and quick reflexes soon turned the tables. Using feints and evasive maneuvers, he wore her down until she was exhausted. When she was finally vulnerable, the hitman made his move, leaving Big Guy beaten and bloody. One final bullet ended her life, but the sudden awakening of the guard dog forced him to flee. With the dog in hot pursuit, he vaulted over the yard wall, escaping just as the dog failed to follow. He then lit the malt liquor bottle, setting the entire place ablaze. Despite his injuries, he wasted no time flying to Paris to find Cotton Swab. He began staking out her residence, enduring the pain with painkillers. Finally, he spotted a woman that matched Jack's description. She looked exactly like Jack had described, a woman who resembled a Cotton Swab. He followed her car to a romantic restaurant. If a single woman ends up dead without signs of sexual assault, the boyfriend is always the first suspect, so he boldly walked into the restaurant and sat right across from her. She tried to stop him, but the sight of the weapon at his waist made her freeze. She instantly guessed his identity and figured her partner must already be dead. She ordered the most expensive wine, requesting that she be allowed to enjoy her last meal. She even offered the hitman a glass. Seeing his hesitation, "I don't have the power to predict the future and poison you," she said. The hitman obliged, downing the glass. She appreciated his demeanor, and quietly followed him out of the restaurant afterward. As they walked, she tried negotiating about where she would die, but suddenly slipped and fell, asking him to show some gentlemanly courtesy and help her up. Naturally, the hitman reached out. His principle, other than self-discipline and attention to detail, was to never trust anyone. The knife in her hand confirmed that his instincts were right. Though he had now avenged his wife, the revenge was far from over. The mastermind was still out there, a powerful billionaire who had placed the contract on the Solomok platform. Her secure apartment was virtually impenetrable. Even a fly couldn't get in. Getting close to her seemed impossible, but every human has a weakness. The billionaire's weakness was her love for flaunting her wealth. She never left home without her bodyguards or luxury car. The hitman noticed her bodyguard's bag had a logo on it, and quickly searched it online, discovering it belonged to a nearby club. The club was only a 9-minute walk away, so he headed there immediately. As he passed by a cleaning staff member, he intentionally scraped his clothes against the cleaner's keychain, snatching the keycard without anyone noticing. The cleaner, apologizing profusely, didn't realize her work badge had been swapped. The hitman lay in wait in the locker room until the bodyguard finished his workout. Then he used the stolen keycard to open the locker, copying the door card data. He then replaced the card without leaving a trace. At that moment, the billionaire was still working out, unaware that her doom was approaching. That very night, the hitman used the copied keycard to gain entry to her secure apartment. After navigating through the labyrinthine halls, he appeared inside his home like a ghost. The billionaire, who was on the phone, turned around, stunned, thinking he was being robbed. He tried to negotiate, saying, "Name your price." He even joked about the security of his apartment, but the hitman coldly threw the contract at him, and he realized why the hitman was there. He quickly explained, "I have no grudge against you. When you failed your mission, my lawyer advised me to take out insurance, so I placed that order." He thought he was as good as dead, but the hitman didn't intend to kill him. "I want you to know my power. I can take your life whenever I wish." Watching the hitman leave, his legs trembled, even with all his wealth. After this, the hitman realized one thing: in his line of work, debts always had to be repaid. He retired for good, moving to a remote island with his wife, finally able to sleep peacefully without placing glasses on door handles.